Guys, do you know what isn't badass?
Rachel's Egg.
Star Wars.
Yeah.
And this report coming out of the Hollywood Reporter that Rey is the new focus of the future of Star Wars on the big screen. Guys, I don't know if you took the time to read this Hollywood Reporter article, but man, is it bad. It is really, really bad. And it doesn't bode well for everyone who actually still cares about this franchise or whatever. But basically, they said that they've either killed off or ended the storyline for all the nostalgic characters. And so the only character that they really have left to do with on the big screen is Rey Palpatine / Skywalker. And they're not counting the Mandalorian in there because they're like, oh, that came from TV. The only real cinematic draw is still Rey. And so they're talking about how all of the projects that have to do with like the current Skywalker timeline is going to involve Rey, including the new trilogy from Simon Kinberg, apparently. But there's a lot of speculation out there. A lot of people still don't know what the hell's going on with Star Wars. They have so much stuff in development that they're not sure which is actually going to be released first. And therefore, because they don't know what's going to be released first, all the people who are planning out their Star Wars projects have no idea what the crossover is going to be. So they're all just kind of making shit up as they go along, as you do with the world's biggest franchise. But Mr. Giant Slayer, you, sir, have great opinions on this type of thing. So why do you think that Star Wars is going to base their entire future around a female character that nobody gives a shit about and nobody likes?
Kathleen Kennedy? Well, besides her, I mean, think about it. What have they done when you read the article? They pretty much are having Rey collect names like Infinity Stones. I mean, that's pretty much it. She started as a Palpatine. They marketed her later as a Skywalker. And she's going to wear the robes of Obi-Wan Kenobi, basically. I mean, it's like, really, what's next? She's going to be, within a few years, the entire Star Wars family tree. You're going to have Rey, Solo, Organa, Duchess of Tatooine, Queen of Naboo, Empress of the Universe, and, hey, we just found out she's half Wookiee and the long-lost cousin to Boba Fett. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, in 20 years, it's going to be, the movie's just going to be Rey. There'll be no other characters, just Rey. She'll be Yoda by then. No, they're doing all this because the whole force is female. It doesn't make any sense, especially because of the fact that Kathleen Kennedy should be the next person we need to elect out, remove, somehow find to get her the hell out of Disney. I mean, we've seen its slow destruction. Force Awakens, then Last Jedi, Rise of Skywalker, and one bad series after another. I mean, this whole thing, the Motion Picture Association put out a message on the night of the election after it was over, and they congratulated the president-elect. And I thought that right there should have sent a message to every single studio, Disney, since they're the tip of the spear for this whole woke mind virus movement. But they didn't seem to get they didn't seem to hear it.
Didn't seem to get the memo. But, Kathleen Kennedy, Brian, for the longest time, like, she has put her feminist agenda foremost into Lucasfilm properties because her motivation behind it wasn't just about empowering women, right? It was also about trying to get a larger female demographic into the franchises that Lucasfilm controls. We're talking things like Star Wars, Indiana Jones, Willow, all that stuff, right? And in terms of Willow, they even went like full woke, putting gay, LGBTQ things in there. Same thing with Star Wars. And then like giving Indiana Jones like a female successor, essentially, with Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Right.
So she has been consistent, at least in her endeavor to try to push forward female feminist centric stuff. Like she, her and Nike, the Force is female, like that. That's where that whole thing originated. And I've had really good inside sources talking about how like there were people who were set to go on stage at live Star Wars events, and she nixed them because they were white men as opposed to women. And so like she's really pushing this whole feminist agenda, but she's banking the entire franchise, the future of the franchise, on Daisy Ridley's character. So why do you think she keeps pushing this agenda, even though it's proven to be a non-starter for the franchise?
Because she's an activist,
A little sexist, a little racist. I mean, I don't really know. It doesn't work. I think the better question is, why does the studio keep allowing her to?
Great.
Why does the studio keep letting her lose them money and destroy, a golden goose that could have produced tons of cash for decades? Not just in TV and movies, but merchandise, lightsabers. I mean, I got one, and I hate Star Wars. Like, I got so much Star Wars crap in my house, it's ridiculous. Star Wars pays the bills. I mean, this is what happens: is anyone that likes Star Wars, their family members, it's like easy gifts for them every birthday or holiday. Just get them something with Star Wars on it.
Yeah.
Dude, I haven't liked Star Wars for a decade, and I still get Star Wars crap from friends of mine who aren't paying attention. So,
just on that note, Brian, my grandkids and my wife, they asked me, what do you want for Christmas or your birthday this year? And I have to tell them, I go, don't buy me any Star Wars crap, because I'm tired of Star Wars. I'm done with it. But you know what I get from my grandkids, because they just don't understand? I get Star Wars stuff. I get a Darth Vader kitchen spatula set or some goofy ass weird present like that, So they just don't they don't comprehend. It's like, Grandpa doesn't.
I have a giant Darth Vader wall art helmet thing that I just got for my birthday in October. And I get it. Like, someone went to a thrift store and they saw it and they're like, oh, Brian would love that because he's a Star Wars fan 20 years ago.
This thing over here behind me in the corner, that's my Darth Vader shrine. That's all full of Darth Vader stuff right there. Mostly my kids have gotten me, so
the reality is they're not just pushing an agenda, Brian. What they're doing is they're destroying history. They thought, at least in my opinion, Kathleen Kennedy, she's like, when she started, the Force is female, right? Force Awakens, we're going to do something. We're going to give all the girls this. Cool. No one gives a damn that it was a girl. They care that none of the characters were correct. None of the historical characters. No one was written properly. But what happens when you track it? When you track everything that they've done, it leads one way: to destroy the original Star Wars, the heart of it, what George Lucas created, to kick the fans out of the fandom. Everybody who loved it, everybody who grew up with it, everybody who bought all the merchandise, and to build a new fandom. The reality is, though, they do not exist. The generation she wanted to fill the hole with, they don't spend any money on anything. They don't watch. They just bitch online on Twitter, on X today, Instagram.
Well, it's also a tiny percentage of like the population. Like, she's trying to change. You have this set audience already, and she's trying to go for another audience, but the audience she's going for has to hit so many marks. So you want like a feminist, whether it be a male feminist, which is a small percentage, or women feminists, which is a small percentage actually. And you need people that are all about, progressive trans rights and all this stuff. Well, they never liked Star Wars. So you're looking for an audience of those kind of people who already like Star Wars or like science fiction or whatever. They don't. Like, these guys are watching like Gossip Girl and One Tree Hill and stuff like that. Like, they're not watching Star Wars. So you're trying to create a fan base that just doesn't exist in numbers that will support your, this behemoth. Yep. And the studio is allowing it. And it doesn't really make any sense. So it has to be like an agenda-driven thing, because it doesn't make any sense for monetarily. And what does a business exist for? To make money.
Except for in Hollywood. Remember, Disney has been about, and they've said it clearly, it's just people don't believe them. They're about the agenda, the message push. That's why I say Kathleen Kennedy, you really want to break it all down? She put a strap on, and she's been screwing Star Wars and its fandom for the last few years. I mean, that's the reality. What motivation is.
I want to move this on to Mr. Butters. Mr. Butters, we just had a huge countrywide election where basically the Kathleen Kennedy of politics, Kamala Harris, I should say. She ran her campaign the way that Kathleen Kennedy's been running Star Wars. She tried to court women exclusively, right? Alienated like the entire male demographic. Was shrill, was talking about women specific issues that only appealed to like a very specific user base. And
hadn't really thought about it like that.
the entire country resoundingly rejected this agenda that she was pushing.
Mhm.
And they've also resoundingly rejected the direction in which Star Wars is going based around Kathleen Kennedy stuff. So Kathleen Kennedy is the Kamala Harris of Hollywood, essentially. So like,
Yeah.
do you think that she's going to take any lessons from this this election and be like, hey, maybe I should start catering to our core fan base as opposed to, this
No.
woman fan base that doesn't exist?
No, I think it's too ingrained in her DNA at this point for her to reject it. Kathleen Kennedy is one of these weirdos that's probably going out in the middle of her car and recording a screaming video on her phone, that she hasn't posted out there yet. But I don't know why she can't figure out that her feminist nonsense doesn't sell. It's just it's proven itself over and over again with their lack of ability to make a hit movie or television show. They got lucky with the Grogu thing, and the Grogu thing was just because he was cute and people wanted to buy plushies. Same thing with the politics and the Kamala Harris stuff. There's not enough of these weirdos out there with purple hair and bald hair now to support an election candidate. It's just never going to happen. They're never going to be able to make a movie, and they're never going to be able to elect a candidate outside their really deep blue freaky city zones, like where AOC is from, to support their cause. So no, it's never going to work because there's too many of us people out there that don't support it.
There's so many of us, though. Like,
yeah.
If people think that it's a 50-50 split, it is not.
It's not.
No, you're talking about like a 90-10 split at best. There are more people that think this is nuts and crazy and just won't. They don't want to open their mouths because they don't want to get, they don't want to get ransacked by the insane ultra left. That it's sort of crazy that, and the studios have this information. Like there's people over there they're not dumb. They have the numbers. They can see the Disney Plus views and subscribers and people that are signing up versus leaving or whatever. They know what works and what doesn't, which is why when Willow came out, it was promptly thrown into the tax haven waste bin and removed from, history. They know what works, what doesn't. They know when they're losing money. So it's sort of nuts. Like, you got to wonder, is it an agenda thing, or does Kathleen Kennedy have pics of her just like pegging the, top 3 shareholders at Disney or something? I don't get it.
I agree.
Well, I want to throw this to Tom Connors for a little bit because, Tom, I was actually thinking about this the other day where, growing up, Star Wars was about, it was, at its core, Star Wars was a coming of age story, right? It was Luke Skywalker.
I thought it was about toys.
Well, a lot of people think it's about space wizards for kids, but the thing is that it's a coming of age story. We follow Luke Skywalker and his journey from being like a kid to manhood. And his arc there is not only about saving the universe, but it's also about saving his father. And so it's a very father-son focused trilogy. And, when I was growing up, like every kid, like kind of like looks up to his father and they want to bond over that type of thing. And watching Star Wars with my dad was a big bonding experience. And it feels like Kathleen Kennedy has been actively trying to remove that core heart from Star Wars by like shelving all these like classic characters, making it more female focused. And this isn't just limited to Kathleen Kennedy. So I want to get your take on this, where it came out recently that it's been confirmed that the Fantastic Four movie, Silver Surfer, has been gender swapped into, like a female Silver Surfer, with the confirmation that Julia Garner, who's a great actress, by the way, I really like her, but she's been confirmed as being the Silver Surfer in the upcoming Fantastic Four movie. And by the way, everyone, links to all these articles is in the description of the video in case you want to do your own research. But Tom, why do you think Hollywood seems to think that being female focused is a winning strategy for traditionally male appealing franchises?
Well, see here, the problem is you, not them. You're misogynist. You don't want to see women in things. You voted against Kamala. You are scared of strong women, Matt.
Women do frighten me. Yeah. Women are
No,
scary.
like let's be
Only
real.
the really
Honestly,
strong ones.
this only makes sense to people like Kathleen Kennedy at the end of the day, and they basically got to sleep in the slop they made at this point. I can't believe they haven't got the memo yet on most of this shit. Andre's been saying for a while it's going to be a female Silver Surfer, and we all kind of knew that. And of course, they're going to hide behind this idea that there was a female Silver Surfer for a half a second in the comics. And pretend that this is a thing.
They always do that. Like, it was in the comics for one issue no one read.
In a dream sequence for 5 panels, you know, like
although she does look hot. I'm being honest.
Like, who cares at the end of the day? Like, Star Wars, as far as Kathleen Kennedy goes, I mean, she has been trying to destroy the male image of Star Wars since she's been there. And she's had acolytes like Filoni and others who are more than willing to do that. And let's be real, the few times they have been male-centric, like you pointed out with Mandalorian and Grogu, what happens? It was successful.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And then we got Lizzo and Jack Black. And it was
yeah.
Look, here's all I know is they want to get my money as an old school original 1977 Star Wars fan. The last thing I would want to do is make a trilogy of movies starring Daisy Ridley as Rey.
Right.
It's
well,
just
and
not,
here,
it's not going to, and it's nothing against Daisy Ridley. She's fine. It's just nobody wants to watch a Rey movie.
It's the same thing with Furiosa, right? Like,
right.
Look, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether or not the movie's good or not. The point is you have a story that is built upon Mad Max with no Mad Max in it.
Yeah, it's also a Star Wars problem.
You're just trying to pick a fight with me now, Tom.
Well, no,
but I mean, it's the same kind of thing. It's the same kind of
it.
problem you have here. Is you have Star Wars with no real Star Wars in it. You have Mad Max with no real Mad Max in it. You have Star Trek with no Star Trek in it. You have Doctor Who with no Doctor Who in it. You have Black Panther, another one coming with no actual Black Panther in it. And that's a good example because that's the one where, like with He-Man, like the guy behind He-Man besides Kevin Smith flat out said the reason they took a character that was white and red-haired and race swapped them was because, quote, no one would care if they created a new character. Well, that's on you, not us, right? We do give a shit when you do this to a character who actually exists. Why? Because it may mean something to somebody, right? You talk about this importance of representation. What about the people who did feel represented already by that character? You didn't take that into consideration at all. You know, and not only that, it's like people have an image in their mind of what a character looks like. When I say Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, an image pops in your mind, right? When you say Batman, an image pops in your mind. In nobody's mind does anybody pop up the image of Batman as a black man or a trans Asian woman, right? It's just not that way. Same thing, or better yet, Superman, since you can actually see all of his face. And at the end of the day, they're doing this because they know they can't sell these kind of characters on their own. They tried. Look at Captain Marvel. Traditionally, that character was initially male, but for the better part of its existence now has been female, right? In the Marvel side of things. So nobody really had a problem with it necessarily. The problem was in the fact of where you positioned it and then what you did with the sequel and who you had playing Captain Marvel still at the end of the day. So even the times when we do have something that's traditionally a female character, what's wrong with it? They make them obnoxious as fuck.
Yeah.
Right. That's the other problem. It's
She-Hulk.
And Dune 2 is a great example. Something where you had a strong female character in the book.
Chani.
Right? If you read the book, Chani is a very strong character, a very forward character, has a lot to do with the story. And I'm sitting here watching the movie going, you're only doing this because you're going to try and flip it around at some point, because in the next book, they can't have Anya Taylor-Joy playing the villain. Okay, spoilers, guys. That's what happens in the next books.
Yeah.
You also can't have a feminine strength, which is what they're able to do in the book, and they have to turn it into a much more masculine strength in the movie because, again, strength these days can only be exactly.
They don't understand what's feminine strength and what's male strength either. These are the same people that are.
I think She-Hulk has a lot of feminists. Like when she was in her human form, she was a feminine character
in the comics.
No, I'm talking about not in the comic. In the show, she was feminine in the show.
You watched that show?
Yeah, I did. We you know why I watched it? Because we all talked about it. You're supposed to watch things you talk about, guys. You don't just complain about things you don't watch.
And I'm like, nope, I'm good.
Even she's got that modern masculization though, right? Because it was all about because it wasn't her character trying to sleep, get someone to sleep with her and stuff like. It's so basically
No,
like
she
that
was
old
sure she
trope.
was using apps to date. No,
Yeah,
she was a pretty feminine character.
Let-
It was the
let-
people around her that were not feminine. That's the problem.
let me hop in here for a second, Brian. I think the problem with a lot of the feminist point of view that's being injected into Hollywood is that it's not so much about kind of raising up the benefits of women or the strengths of women or the thing that make women unique and different from men. It's very much about trying to put men down and shame men at the to the benefit of women, right? So
Right.
in She-Hulk, there was all that stuff about how, I get catcalled, therefore I'm angry all the time, and women are therefore more in control
That's
of their
true.
emotions.
Yeah.
And there's all and every dude in the law office was a complete idiot, who didn't
Yeah, well,
deserve their positions.
Mark
And-
Ruffalo was more of a feminist than the main character, though.
Yeah.
Mark
He
Ruffalo-
was such a bitch of that. in the show.
But I want to throw this to Odin because Odin, with a multi-billion-dollar legendary franchise like Star Wars, you would think that there would be some type of master plan, somebody would be sitting there overseeing all these different projects and making sure everyone's communicating and everyone's coordinating and everyone knows what the other person's doing, blah blah blah. And we don't get any of that from Lucasfilm. Never have under Kathleen Kennedy's reign. At least when Lucas was involved and he had the EU, there were people in charge of the EU to make sure continuity, happened across books and TV shows and stuff like that. And George Lucas would have approval power, right? It seems like Kathleen Kennedy's thing is just as long as it checks all the right boxes, we want feminism, we want gender binariness, we want dinosaurs, we want all this other stuff. As long as we get all that stuff, I don't care what you do. So I want to hear from you. Number one, do you think that there's ever a chance that we're going to get away from trying to make Star Wars into a girl brand? And number two, why can't they just hire someone to oversee everything and make sure everything works?
We will only, and if Kathleen Kennedy and her entire team of cronies are outed completely, because that's the problem.
The deep state?
Exactly, the deep state of Star Wars. That's basically what it is, and that's it's amazing how much it rhymes sometimes, right? How much it is very similar. Because
will that even matter though? Because at the end of the day, the problem here is they killed all the main characters, though. Sorry, Odin.
No, but even with that though, if you actually think about it for a moment, if you actually had a realistic takeover, I guess you could say, where these people are just completely pushed out, and instead you have well-known fans, whether it be, hey, your writing team consists of people oh my goodness, his name, Michael Stackpole, who did the X-Wing novels. You bring in people from the EU as your writing staff.
Timothy Zahn.
Imagine if you had that as your writing team, dedicated writing team, and then you had someone else who was at the top in the producer's role or whatever it might be, and they were Star Wars fans, clear-cut Star Wars fans, no doubt whatsoever. As long as you have the rest of that rot out there, I think they could probably create a product that could bring people back. That first one may not be able to, go ahead and full and do it, but keep in mind, right? People thought that Disney Pixar was dead, and it looked like that was the case. But then Inside Out 2 came around and said, hey, guess what? If you actually give a product that has a fan base and also you keep the woke stuff out of it, people will actually go to see that movie. And so I think Star Wars would be very similar too, but you need to have a complete wiping away. It's not just Kathleen Kennedy. It's every one of her underlings who's going to have the same type of mindset, any of the activist mindset there, because it's a financial problem ultimately, right? Because if you go back, first film in the sequel trilogy, $2 billion. Second film in the sequel trilogy, $1.3 billion. So you already have massive loss there. And then the last movie only made $1 billion, and that film ended up losing over $100 million. So you just have to keep in mind that at some point, the chickens have to come home to roost. They have to be able to hold people accountable, and that's at least the hope. And if they do, it has to be more than just Kathleen Kennedy. It has to be basically the entire organization to be restructured. I think it'll take years to actually do that, but I think if they actually could put a team together, they could bring people back. It's just going to take a long time and a lot of people.
Right. They need about eight years, I think, 8 to 10 to go away and do nothing. Just let Star Wars
the one thing we learned about Pixar was with Inside Out 2, all the people that kept trying to interject the woke shit into it got fired.
Right, but they had a civil war, Tom. That was the whole point. If you see look how they changed Inside Out, the end. When you get into Inside Out 2, you had that surprise ending, the way they were framing it. They changed it because they had their little civil war. They were like, no, we wanted to make her gay. We want this whole thing. We want to push the agenda with the agenda. And Disney finally said, no. I think that's still going on. For Star Wars, Odin is absolutely right. You have to fire everybody. Everybody. No Filoni, no Hidalgo, no.
Well, and that's what we keep hearing is that Lucasfilm is on its own little Epstein Island over there doing their own thing, kind of separate from the rest of the group.
Yeah.
And I mean, yeah, other than the female
Look at
Silver
Deadpool and
Surfer, it
Wolverine,
seemed like, yeah, Marvel
Tom.
did get some of the memo. Yeah, well, that happened outside of the bubble.
Right.
See, that's an exception to the rules.
That's because it's
Yeah, we always
But,
gotta
but
remember
wasn't
that.
She-Hulk pissed that she wasn't in there and Ryan cut her because it was too feminist?
No, okay. Stop. Everybody, he's taking a joke she made on a podcast and running with it like it's confirmation of something when it wasn't. If you actually listen to the podcast, she was poking fun at people who were running with these fake Mike Zero type scoops. About
Either way,
Deadpool and
it
Wolverine.
didn't serve us the same, slop that Lucas does. So you're
True,
saying that
true. But the point was it had nothing to do with the MCU, right? Like that's the thing. Deadpool and Wolverine had more to do with Fox than it had anything to do with Marvel at the end of the day.
Or Ryan Reynolds, basically.
It had more to do with Ryan Reynolds, and Chapek is the one who greenlit that film. If anything,
why doesn't Lucas, Tom? Why doesn't Lucas, who's the largest single shareholder of Disney, just put his thumb on the scale and go stop this shit? I mean, he has the ability to. Publicly,
I really don't know.
He could come out.
Well, I mean, George, he's aligned with Kathleen Kennedy. He's the one who chose her, right, as his successor. He's friends with her. He's been friends with her and her husband for decades. And also, Lucas doesn't care anymore. Like he wanted to get out. So anything that happens, he's just like, okay, I might not like it, but whatever. Right?
And he didn't have a problem with Rey. The problem he had with The Force Awakens, remember this, guys, was that as far as he was concerned, it was just a remake of A New Hope.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you look at what his plans were that he gave them, it's pretty much The Last Jedi.
But
the only difference was that Luke was actually doing some training. That was really the only kind of difference in the mix of it all. Because Rey was ostensibly that character that he came up with. I forgot her name, but like they're basically the same character.
Right. I just don't think he doesn't care. To me, anything I've created, like when I wrote 2 books years ago, it's been 10 years now. Anything that I've created.
Well, George,
for his children, I just won't accept the fact that he doesn't give a shit. You know why? He went to Cannes. At the Cannes Film Festival this year, you heard again, it's like the 4th interview he's given where he didn't name Disney specifically. I mean, as the problem. He says, when I sold this over to Disney, I had people that I trusted. You can pull up the clip. It's online. And he's like, everybody has their own point of view. I thought certain things were going to be honored. And then he caught himself and stopped talking for a second. And then he basically goes on to say, to paraphrase it, he said, what's done is done, but that's bad. Again, I'm
George, I was at the Cannes Film Festival back when they premiered Revenge of the Sith.
Okay.
And George Lucas at that time, like he was very disillusioned with Star Wars because the prequels were not received like he had wanted them to be. And so like after the Phantom Menace and he got that kind of criticism, he tried to course correct with Attack of the Clones and he got even harsher criticism. I can tell you at Cannes, because I went to the premiere of the Revenge of the Sith there, and George Lucas was in attendance and all this other stuff. At the end of that movie, there was such a lukewarm clapping that like you could tell it affected him. And I think that was the beginning of the end where he decided, you know what, like I don't care about this anymore. I want to get away from it. I agree
with you, but that was so long ago, and the prequels have found love, especially after the sequels came out.
People need to understand that George never really wanted to make a bunch of Star Wars movies. I keep trying to tell people this. He got sucked up into it. If he had his druthers, he wanted to make movies like THX 1138.
Yeah,
like that's the kind of stuff he wanted to make. The only reason he made American Graffiti and Star Wars is because he got chewed out by Francis Ford Coppola and ended up losing them their 3-picture deal at Warner Brothers. And he's got challenged by Francis and his and Marcel Lucas to actually make a movie that people want to see. And they're like, why don't you just make a comedy or a kids movie? And that was the result. And Star Wars just got so big. They never expected it to be what it was. He keeps revising history. He had 90% of his story in Star Wars. He just had to get rid of some of the more crazier ideas that he put into Return of the Jedi.
Tom, you said Martha Lucas?
Yes, his
Yeah.
wife.
Why did you say that name? Why did
Martha.
I had to, Martha. She is the key to Star Wars, and we all know this.
Why
But also
did you
you made a
say
good point.
Martha?